But now people are saying, hey, look at Korea.
Not only look at Korea, but look at all the amazing things that Korea is doing.
안녕하세요. This is Mark Peterson with the Frog Outside the Well Research Center. Today I'm doing something I've wanted to do for a long time. And graciously, I have with me today Sam Richards. The Sam Richards.
the infamous. 안녕하세요. I'm also honored to be on your podcast. It's not a podcast, on your YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Frog Outside the Well.
What you have done here is just incredible. A lot of YouTubers have pirated your stuff. And it's taken off like crazy.
Yeah.
And I think I know why, but I'd like to know why you think it's taken off.
I think the biggest thing, what I'm experiencing across the board is, I put these cameras in a room, and you get a vision inside of this large classroom, which really isn't a classroom. I mean, it's an auditorium of, almost 800 people. But it's a window into what's happening in a university. And the footage is good, the audio is good. I'm willing to bring students up front. I've learned over the years that people don't want to listen to me. My students don't want to listen to me. They want to listen to other students. So the reason my class is so popular at Penn State is because students want to listen to other students talk. They don't want to hear me. If I start lecturing, if I go on for more than about 6 minutes, people go to sleep. So
you're so good at bringing up students and bringing them out.
Yeah.
And finding how their cultural values are underlying the things that they're trying to do. It's just that's part of the appeal, I think.
I think so.
Spontaneity of it.
Yeah.
But there's something deeper than that. There's something Korean about it, or
okay.
some Korean thing about why they like you.
Well, okay, so for certain, it's not, as you know, as a retired professor, you know that not many people do the kinds of things. They don't teach in the way that I do.
Yeah.
We don't turn it over to students or risk actually the spontaneity, the spontaneous interactions that happen when you ask questions. And you don't know what students are going to say. I think Koreans find it even more refreshing than Americans do.
Just the spontaneity of it all.
Yeah, the fact that, I'm willing to give students a voice and willing to bring them up and have them talk. And when my wife and I do presentations here at Congo, and sometimes people have said students are not going to want to volunteer, and we say, they know, they watch the videos. And just last week, we did a talk and we asked for volunteers, and there were about 20 hands that went up in the air. And I said, well, they wouldn't volunteer for you maybe, because you wouldn't set up an environment in which you just not demanded, but expected them to volunteer.
Yeah.
And set up that kind of learning situation.
You treat people, even though you show incredible differences, they're not right and wrong in the differences.
Yeah.
You treat everybody with respect. It's not like you did a good job and you did a lousy job. You treat everybody with what they contribute to the game.
Well, I have something that many academics would never admit to have or don't want to have, which is the curiosity of a 3-year-old. and so that actually benefits me, right? I get some people would say I have the intellect of a 3-year-old as well, but I'm just so curious about the kinds of things that people have to see.
I've got 2 grandchildren that are 3, and their curiosity is marvelous. If we could all have that, that'd be great.
If we could sustain that. But what happens is, and you know this, that we start to center in on some particular topic, and then we go into the weeds of that.
Yeah.
And then we get lost.
Yeah.
And then if we have to come back out and explain it to the world, it becomes a very difficult thing to do. And so, with your videos on Korean history, you can only go so far because you really will lose people. But the fact is that, once you become an expert on something, you can't go into the depth that you would in a book.
Yeah.
You've got to just give enough to make it really interesting.
What motivates me are TED Talks.
Yeah.
Where the idea that a Secretary of State or a Senator or a Nobel Prize winner, whoever you are, you got 14 minutes.
Yeah.
Tell me everything you know.
Yeah.
What have you learned in 14 minutes?
Yeah.
I like that small capsule idea.
Yeah.
And it fits the short attention span of people these days.
Well, and that fits the videos that you're doing, right? Except that some are 5 minutes and some are 8 minutes and some are longer. And many of the ones that I do, well, all my videos are 75 minutes, and then my team cuts them down to either 60 seconds or 5 minutes or 10 or 15 or something like that, but generally not longer than 15. And I do segments in my class, so each class is broken into 2 or 3 different segments.
And you feature Korea sometimes and a Latin American country sometimes.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia or the Middle East or Israel, Palestine.
That's one reason why people like you is you're so universal.
Yeah, well that's one thing as well, that you can watch the channel and you never know what we're going to talk about on the channel. And see, so this is the good and the bad. I'm a generalist, so I have over the years have trained myself to learn about the entire world. For years I would read the New York Times cover to cover and my mentor said that I needed to do this when I was about 21 years old. He said, start reading the Times, the Washington Post or Wall Street Journal or somewhere where you're going to get a sort of a look at the news. And so you can pretty much point anywhere on the map and I'm going to have something to say about something that's going on in there. But don't ask me to go into depth on more than just a few topics, like a deep dive into them, because that's not what I do.
That's why we have a good symbiosis, I think, because I'm just the opposite. I say I'm the frog outside the well. I'm so deep in this well. You should see my airline report. Korea. Yours, I'd like to see your thing. You go all over the world, literally.
Yeah, very much so. And the Koreans don't have a sense of that because they're mostly only watching the videos about Asia, East Asia, or Korea.
Yeah.
But then they suddenly start to realize, wait a minute, I looked at your videos, you're talking about everywhere, it's not just Korea. And I say, that's why I don't put up more videos about Korea than I do, because I'm busy talking about
other countries as well. Well, the question, why do Koreans like your stuff? I've got an answer for you. The answer is Rodney Dangerfield.
Wait, what was it? I get no respect.
I get no respect. Korea has gone through a phase of its history where it was beaten up by the Japanese, by the Korean War. And when I first came to Korea in 1965, this was a dirt poor place. It was the poorest place in the world. I mean, there were other countries that were just as poor, but you couldn't get any poorer than $125 a year per capita.
Well, the Congo, as it was known back then, now it's the DRC, but the GDP of the Congo was higher than Korea's in 1965.
And so I've seen Korea grow into a modern, prosperous, self-confident country, but they were not self-confident for a long time. They were Rodney Dangerfield. They were, I tell you, I get no respect, nobody's paying attention to me. They're looking down their nose at me. Japan's looking down their nose at me. Everybody's looking down their nose at me, Korea. But now people are saying, hey, look at Korea.
Not only look at Korea, but look at all the amazing things that Korea is doing.
Okay, well, it's been great talking to you, Sam. I think we'll come back and visit you again, but we'll say goodbye for now.
I hope so. All right.
See you.
Goodbye.